One of the big things about Titanfall 2 is that it's got a single-player campaign. Hooray! The first game might have had this story wrapped around a series of multiplayer matches, but they were just multiplayer matches all the way through. What people really wanted was a single player, it seems, and Respawn wanted to develop a single player again. So that's what they've done for Titanfall 2, and I'm happy to say it's actually really quite good. You play as the very blandly named Jack Cooper, who's just a lowly rifleman. But at the same time, he's being mentored by one of the elite pilots in the militia army, Captain Lastimoso. But just as the story picks up, you're thrown in at the deep end as a big all-out assault on an IMC planet goes all sorts of wrong, and you find yourself linked to the Titan BT-7274. It's this kind of symbiotic link between the two, with three directives that a Titan always has to follow. First, to link to a pilot, whoever that happens to be. Second, to always complete the mission objective. And third, to ensure that the pilot lives, in that particular order. You will see some of that coming back time and again throughout the story. You go on this big adventure together, going behind enemy lines, fighting through installations, hooking up with other militia groups every once in a while, and working to uncover what the IMC have been up to on this planet, and put a stop to their, frankly, very dastardly plan. It really manages to build on the core principles of what Titanfall is, with plenty of wall running, fast and fluid combat, often in quite wide and open areas, and then plenty of moments where you're actually in the Titan as well, fighting against other Titans and robots. It's cleverly put together in a way that, as I think I've said before, sometimes feels more like an action-adventure game instead of a first-person shooter. It's not just running down a corridor shooting at enemies, there's plenty of moments where you're just traversing through the environment instead of just going through simple combat moments. And while fights are often quite freeform, and you often get to try and approach an area fairly stealthily as opposed to going in guns blazing, there's also a nice progression in a location where you get to hear the comms chatter between the important mercenary characters, and this leads up to a boss fight pitting Titan against Titan. And there's no end of spectacle throughout the campaign, with each area having a particular twist to the gameplay and the environment, which just stays around for just long enough that you wish you could play with it a little bit more, but never too long that it's actually overdone. The same is true of the campaign itself. It's a fairly short and sweet 5 hours long, but it doesn't feel particularly rushed. I think the main downside is that the boss fights themselves are very easily beaten just by getting to one of BT's core abilities and then unleashing an almighty amount of damage in a very short space of time. It's just a little bit too simplistic, and I'd have enjoyed them to find a way to mix things up a little bit more. In many ways, the star of the show is BT himself. You talk to him throughout the length of the story, able to pick dialogue options and flesh out some of the things that are going on. But he's also unintentionally humorous, or at least as unintentional as a completely written script can manage to be. There's always this nice back and forth between Jack and the deadpan AI. And of course, yes, there's this link between the two. You're no doubt thinking, oh, Respawn are just going to kill BT off at the end. And much like Respawn, I'm going to remain tight-lipped on that point, because you should find that out for yourself. But what I will say is that they have a lot of fun with that particular idea and this relationship as you're going through. So the single player is a fun action romp, but just as with so many shooters out there, it's the multiplayer that will sustain players for weeks and months after launch. It takes an already excellent multiplayer game and makes changes across the board while preserving that core gameplay of high-speed traversal, fun and satisfying gunplay, and, of course, calling in and savouring the supreme power of being in your Titan. One of the biggest changes comes with the Titans themselves. They are no longer fully customizable, but half a dozen bespoke loadouts, each combining a particular size and form with an appropriate weapon and abilities. So the sniping North Star is built on a light chassis, making it quite fragile in a close encounter, but can also jump up into the sky, so you've got the advantage of shooting down from up high. While Tone, on the other hand, has got a 40mm cannon and powerful homing rockets, and is also built on a larger frame, so, you know, they're a bit better close up. They can all be tweaked in a handful of different ways, so that their AI reacts differently when it's on its own, or that they warp into battle and stuff like that. But these classes are set in stone, and it's like, you know, you can find something that you're happy with and just stick with that, basically. It also helps you when you face off against them, giving you an idea of what abilities and weapons they have just by looking at their silhouette and what they're holding in their hands. The same is true of the other pilots that you encounter as well, because each of the 7 abilities, from cloaking and putting up shields to creating holographic clones of yourself, or even ducking in and out of shadow dimensions for a few seconds at a time, each of these abilities has got a particular character design attached. There's a nice and fairly concise set of guns to choose from. There's the standard SMGs, LMGs, snipers, shotguns. There's, the kind of things that you'd expect in a game like this. And plenty of these have come across from the first game as well. But there's also new guns that are just a little bit outlandish, with double barrels or a gradually increasing rate of fire. I think across the board there I found them all very satisfying to use, though I did gravitate towards having a few favourites. Your secondary weapon is then either an anti-Titan weapon, which is like a big old grenade launcher, or a massive laser cannon. They're big on power, but they're slow and cumbersome to use. So you can also switch out for a pistol, with one of my favourites being the triple barrel shotgun pistol, which it just looks like you're shooting a firecracker at someone. It's fantastic. The loadouts are then rounded out with a variety of grenades, including one which spawns a little black hole that sucks projectiles and players in, or a blanket of electric smoke. And then there's perks like being able to hang stationary on a wall while you wall run, or getting faster ability recharge and stuff like that. Finally, there's the overarching boost, which is oddly in a separate part of the menus. It's here that you'll find the smart pistol, the ability to reveal the enemy team, scramble their radar, or summon little explosive drones and defense turrets. The game modes do manage to do a few interesting things though. As in the original, attrition is a form of team deathmatch, but the map is also home to tons of grunt AI to kill, and then you're calling in titans, and that gives you the fascinating mismatch of ability and power. So it's much more than standard team deathmatch. Pilot versus pilot though is pure team deathmatch, without even titans to call in. Then you've got capture the flag, which is exactly how you'd expect, and amped hardpoint is domination, but with the ability to overcharge a point and score points at a higher rate. So it's then up to bounty hunt to really add something new and interesting, and it does do that, but it's also tricky to get to grips with, and maybe doesn't flow as well as it could do. Both teams are fighting over the same waves of AI grunts and spectres, trying to kill them in order to rack up points, and then there's also waves of AI titans which drop in, and you have to kill those as well, again trying to get the last hit to get the points for it. If you do manage to get that last hit, then you do get some points that go to your team, but there's also points which go to you personally, and you have to stay alive as long enough to be able to deliver them to a bank which appears between waves. It's a bit confusing, but it does work quite well once you get the hang of it, and I just think that the only thing about it is that it's not as intuitive and easy to pick up and play as the other modes in the game. But just playing the game is just fantastic. You're stringing the wall runs together is so fast, so fluid, and blending this with everything else is just so satisfying. There's been a lot of smart tweaks and changes to the original game's formula, but at its core it's still Titanfall, and it's still brilliant because of it. Thanks for watching our video review of this, but you can get our scored written review over on thesixthaxis.com. And if you've made it this far and decided that Titanfall really isn't for you, or you're interested in other first-person shooters, well, you can also check out our other recent videos and features for Battlefield 1 instead. But before you go, it does help us if you give us a thumbs up or thumbs down on the videos, and please do subscribe if you'd like more of this kind of thing. So I hope to see you next time, and goodbye.
By much. Let's pick up the pace. Stand by for Titanfall. We have full control.